And welcome to our new series, the 2020 Region Rundown, where we preview all of the regions here in our area, which there are 9 of them. Bo Wilson alongside Jeff Hart as we are still in social distancing procedures as we are honoring those, as Jeff shakes his head. Jeff, welcome to the show as we take a look today at Class 7A and in particular Gainesville's brand new region.
6-7A. I tell you, it's kind of exciting to have a local team in the state's largest classification. We're going to have Heath Webb on from Gainesville a little bit later in the show. They've got to be chomping at the bit to kind of get going on this because it's not often you get to play. I mean, Class 7A in Georgia. Mm-hmm. Has got to be one of the best classifications in the entire nation for high school football. When you look at some of the powerhouses that come out of there and how many players come off of these teams that go on to play, not just in Power 5 schools, but just really all over the nation. And so now we have a local team that's playing in the largest classification and one of the best in the entire nation.
Yes. And
it's really interesting.
Well, they move into, as you said just a moment ago, the Forsyth County region, which that is basically what it is. Every school in Forsyth County plus Gainesville. Milton moved out. Gainesville moved in. Denmark also moved up from 4A to 6A and then requested to jump into 7A. And so they are in Region 6, 7A. So it's Denmark, Forsyth Central, Gainesville, Lambert, North Forsyth, South Forsyth, and West Forsyth. And we were picking Coach's brain on what he thought about the new region, and I think the consensus in our talk with him, Jeff, was he feels like West Forsyth could be the favorite to win that region.
Yeah, I that was kind of a surprise. In preparation for our new series, we're both doing some research. West Forsyth, it was really, they went 4-6. Mm-hmm. They did make the playoffs. They lost in the first round. They only averaged 230 yards a game on offense.
Yeah.
That's it. They do return their leading rusher, which was their quarterback, 979. I'm sorry, he passed for 979 yards. Their leading rusher is a senior running back, Duba Fofana. He immediately makes my all-name team. There couldn't be but one of those guys in the entire world, surely. But he only, that was their leading rusher, mm-hmm. 535 yards. And yet they had 21 turnovers last year. And yet, as we'll talk, as we, get to the Heath Webb segment a little bit later, that's the team he's looking at when you look at all the returning things. Every team has some big players returning, but every team also lost a lot of key players. We talked about this at the end of last year when this came out. That this really could be a wide open region, and I think it could have a lot to do with some offenses trying to kind of put some things back together. It's really going to be interesting.
It will be interesting. You were talking with Coach Webb about your belief was North Forsyth looked to be on paper the favorite to win because the quarterback's back. I think their leading rusher is also back, but they lost all 4 of their receivers.
And 4 of their top 6 tacklers on defense. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a lot of production that is, moving on. And, it's like that every year, and you got to have guys that step up and fill roles. But, they went to the second round of the playoff, which I think was their deepest in since 2005. So Robert Kraft over there at Coal Mountain in your stomping grounds, has really got that program on the move. But when you lose a lot of production like that, you've got to find guys to step up, and that's going to be the real question mark for the Raiders is who's going to step up. They got 8 key spots they have to fill, out of 22. So, it's really going to be interesting. I mean, South Forsyth, they 6-4 last year. They returned their quarterback. Well, they returned their junior quarterback who saw significant action. They lost their starter, but in limited time, he actually averaged more yards per game than the number 1 starter. They passed for 243 yards a game, but they only ran for 83. Their top 2 receivers are back. Their top rusher is back, but he only gained 525 yards. So, I can go through every team.
Well, the interesting
in the region where we talk about.
Here's the interesting team to me in this region. Denmark.
Okay.
Denmark jumping from 4 to 7. Of course, their numbers were basically 7A. They were staggering right out of the gate.
Right
out of the gate. So they were put in the region in 6A that housed Buford and Decula, Lanier.
5A. You mean 5? Originally in the new
new
region,
6A,
right.
in the new
right.
8-6A.
Right.
So they decided that they wanted to bump up, and so they bumped up to 7A.
I don't think they wanted any part of Buford. I think that's what.
I don't think they wanted any part of Gwinnett County. So they said, "We're out."
Probably not.
We're out.
Look, I think it makes sense to just if you're going to bump me to 6, we're going to be 7 eventually.
Yes.
We got all of these natural rivalries right here within a 20-minute drive. It made perfect sense for them to move up, but only in their 3rd year, they're already sporting a new coach. They lost one of the nation's best receiver in Xavier Capers. They're a young team across the board. You got Aaron McLaughlin, the former Buford quarterback. He'll be a senior, but their top rusher was a freshman last year. He's going to be a sophomore this year. I mean, they're just going to be young and a lot of question marks. So, in jumping up into the biggest classification, it's going to be interesting to see how they're able to handle that in such a short amount of time.
Well, new coach, there are 3 teams in the region with new coaches. West Forsyth has a new coach. Lambert has a new coach. And, of course, Denmark also has a new coach. So 3 new coaches and teams, one of them moving up from 4A in Denmark. So that will be interesting to see how they handle all of that departure from the program and moving up into the state's largest classification in 7A.
Lambert is an interesting. They got was it the offensive line coach from Lowndes County that has come up to take over the Longhorns, and of course Lowndes lost in the 7A championship game last year to Marietta. Lambert was 0-10. They were not good. Let's just be honest. They were outscored 395 to 127. They scored 7 or less 5 times. I mean, they're only going to be able to go up. But they graduated their quarterback. They only have 11 pass attempts, Bo, from the rest of the roster all of last year for 80 yards. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, 0-10, you got to figure you're going to be better than that, but it's a tough. It's going to be a real balanced region. You're going to have a new coach. But there's just a lot of things in play in this region. A team I kind of like and looking at. I'm looking at Forsyth Central. They just missed out on the playoffs. They lost a 5-point game to West Forsyth and a 1-pointer to North Forsyth, who would finish second in the region. They had 4 games decided by 7 or less. They returned their top 3 rushers from a ground-heavy team. Their quarterback was pretty efficient, 500 passing yards, 5 TDs, 1 interception. I think because of the some of the dynamics, you got Gainesville coming in, Denmark coming in, you got the new coaches. I think Forsyth Central could be a team to look at.
Well, this region is definitely going to stack up interesting from all the way around because of, some of the losses on each team. And kind of sticking with Denmark, Aaron McLaughlin, their 4-star quarterback being recruited by a handful of Power 5 schools. He's supposedly back at Denmark in 2020. That will be kind of interesting to see how he evolves in 7A with a bunch of new pieces around him in this new region.
Well, look, I think Capers had 60 or 70 receptions last year, so we know that was the combination. With Capers gone, who does he look to? I think that's going to be a real issue. They have 2 guys, each about 375 yards last year from the season, 3 touchdowns each. So, there were some guys, both of those guys are going to be seniors. So there were a couple of guys, but Capers was the man, and that's the guy he went to. So it's going to be interesting if those 2 guys maybe can step up. McLaughlin certainly is going to be one of the more experienced quarterbacks in this region. Um, Personally, I don't know if he's a Power Five guy, but I know that they look at his size and arm strength. He does have big arm strength. Decision making, and in the years that I saw him play at Buford, I thought was always the question. They did not make the playoffs last year, and they were expected to make the playoffs. They did not. In fact, I think they were preseason top 3 or 4 in 4A, and they didn't make the playoffs out of 7 4A. So I think there's a lot of question marks with Denmark.
A lot of question marks, and will be interesting to see how it all works itself out come November. And, Jeff, let's get on to the interview with Coach Webb. I don't know if there's anything that in the interview, and, of course, it's a pre-recorded interview for all you folks out there, but we talked to Coach Webb, and anything strike you?
Well, he thinks it literally could go down to the last quarter of the last game. He feels like that everyone is going to be in play, and that includes Lambert that went 0-10 last year. He felt that the Red Elephants are going to be competitive. I mean, he said, I think in his word, they played horrible. I think that was his word, terrible, horrible, several adjectives.
Yes, several.
And still were in that game with North Forsyth. They got Gianni Williams coming back, which is going to be big. He said that even though they lost a big stud on the offensive line with Jordan Williams, they got the bulk of that group coming back. He's not worried about the running game. You have a guy like Yusuf Ali on linebacker that they're going to try to move around. But I think what struck me was, him kind of thinking that West Forsyth was really the team to beat. Because when I looked at this, it's not a team that jumped at me, looking back at last year and what some of the, production that they had coming back. But he feels he's going to be right in the mix in a playoff race. And I think I'm not surprised by that. They're just, but I think the excitement at Gainesville being in the highest classification, I think, we'll have to see how that will play emotionally for the Red Elephants once they get into region play.
Well, let's get to the interview with Gainesville football coach Heath Webb. Talking to Coach Heath Webb from Gainesville High School, and it's our 2020 region rundown. We're looking at the brand new regions and classifications, and we welcome Coach Webb to the show. And, Coach, welcome to Class 7A.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. Always a pleasure.
Well, Coach, when you look at Class 7A, it is the largest classification of the state. First off, thoughts on moving up to Class 7A, and what are your expectations in this brand new venture for your football program?
Well, we're excited about it. It's 7A football instead of Georgia. I could make the argument that's as good as it gets in the country. So, just excited to be a part of that and get ready to jump in. Our kids are excited about it. Our coaches are excited about it. And so we're ready to go.
Well, Coach, I tell you, it's an interesting region. Well, you got you and all the Forsyth County schools. Denmark jumped way up, 3 classifications, but Milton moved out. How do you see the region from a balance standpoint, a competitive standpoint for the Red Elephants?
I think it'll be competitive week in and week out for every team. I think it's going to be one of those situations where anybody can beat anybody on any given night. I think you'll see that the region champion won't be that far off from whoever the 4 seed is. I just think it's going to be that competitive, and just really excited about it, getting into it, and creating some new rivalries.
Well, this brand new region, Coach, in Region 7A, basically Forsyth County region, you guys you've played Forsyth County teams before. You played 2 of them last year, went 1-1, beat Lambert, lost to North Forsyth. So you're somewhat familiar with the Forsyth County region.
Yeah, we are, and in preparation for those 2 teams, we've seen the Forsyth schools too. North Forsyth finished as the 2 seed behind Milton, who's now, as you said, out of that region. And we played our worst game against North Forsyth, and we were really bad, coming off of a huge win against Mary Persons, and we're just flat on the road and didn't play well. but yet we were still in that game, So feel like we got a chance to compete and do some big things.
Well, Coach, every team in that region, when you look at Denmark 7-3, but coming off a playoff, Forsyth Central just missed out on the playoffs last year in that region. Lambert, they were 0-10, but they have a new coach. Denmark has a new coach, and West Forsyth, I believe, has a new coach. North Forsyth had their deepest run since 2005. South Forsyth had a winning record. Each one of those teams has some unique things that are going on. Each lost some key guys, particularly on offense. Is there a team out there that you're looking at right now? I think people might think North Forsyth, since they finished second, Milton is now gone, might, I guess on paper be the initial front runner. But how do you see it?
I think West Forsyth is the team to beat, simply because of what they got coming back. North Forsyth was the highest seeded team, but they lost a lot. But West Forsyth has got pieces coming back. They got skill guys coming back. They've got some really good linemen coming back. So it seems like top to bottom, West Forsyth should be the front runner in my mind, just because of who they have coming back.
Coach, you look at your team going into Class 7A, and I know they're probably excited about playing in the largest classification in the state. Is that kind of the consensus over at Gainesville right now?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Our players were really, really excited for the opportunity. This is something that they wanted. I think we all kind of knew it was out there, but when it became official, they got really excited. So, they're competitors, so therefore they want to be on the biggest stage, and in the state of Georgia, what bigger stage could you ask for? So, our players are really fired up for it and ready to go.
Well, speaking of your team, Coach, long playoff streak going, 20 straight years and counting. And I'm sure you're looking to kind of keep that going this year. You got some guys coming back that can make a real difference. Gianni Williams, it's going to be his second full season at quarterback. Your leading rusher had a pretty good, had a decent year in the passing game as well. You got Lenny Chapman, and I like Lenny. I'm going to tell you, that kid's a player. DJ Miller's coming back. You got Yusuf Ali as a linebacker. And we would like to get your thoughts on how you're going to use Yusuf, because he seems like a guy that can be used pretty much all over the field on defense. I mean, you got some pieces, plus you got that behemoth offensive line. You only lost one guy.
Yeah, we've got some pieces. There's no doubt. I'll start with Yusuf just because we love Yusuf. He's a great leader for us, and he's a player that is one that embraces the leadership role and does a great job with it. He played the outside linebacker spot for us last year, and really teams could kind of go away from him, even though he was super active and just all over the place. But we're going to move him inside this year, so really it can't really avoid him, and so therefore he should have the ability to make more plays. You mentioned the offensive line. We've got four spots coming back. I'd really say 5 starters coming back, just because they've kind of been balanced playing time with Cedric Nicely at the left tackle spot, and Michael Gosa at left guard, and Elijah Ruiz at center, and then at the right guard spot, Lemuel Gale and Dorian Whitehead split time over the last couple of years. And so we got a lot of experience coming back on the offensive line. So we really we got to find who the right tackle will be because of Jordan Williams' graduation. But really like those guys. That's probably the strongest point of our team right now. And you mentioned Gianni, who was our MVP last year, and just a guy that's a great playmaker with the ball in his hands. So another year for him to develop is going to be good too. So we got some pieces coming back.
Jeff was talking about his favorite just a few minutes ago. I took a liking to Ced Nicely in the basketball season. Watched him play basketball a whole bunch, and of course watched him play football last year. He's one of the key returning players on that offensive line. He's already, getting looks at Power 5 or from Power 5 schools. You have to feel comfortable about him coming back, leading the way up front for your offense.
Yeah, and he's taken that leadership role that had, and kind of leading that group. And he's a special player. You see his athleticism on the basketball court, and you can kind of see, what he's going to be capable of doing, for his senior year in high school, but also too for many years to come. But he's a good player. He's a great kid. He's a good kid. He's a good student. Just really proud to have him on my team. And probably more important is that big personality and a big smile that is always uplifting to me. So we think a lot of Cedric.
Well, Coach, you mentioned about the balance of the region. Is there a key stretch that you think could really determine how things go? I know it's an interesting. A lot of people are having to come up with some really interesting non-region schedules. But you managed to hang on to one key game non-region with Flowery Branch. How do you think playing that game against that caliber team right before you head into the region, how do you think that is going to help y'all?
Well, I think it'll help us a lot because Flowery Branch is rather similar to the teams that will be playing in the region, and the fact that they build around their linemen and they focus on the run game and take deep shots when the time is appropriate. So I think it'll help prepare us for the region, and really just glad to be able to hold on to that game. And I feel like Gainesville and Hall County need that game and didn't want to lose it. So Coach Hall and I worked hard to make sure we were able to hold on to it. So I think that'll help us. Then we get into the region schedule, and man, every game is just going to be tough. I mean, it's going to come down to playoff seeding is going to be determined by some tiebreakers. I have no doubt in that, just because I think the region is so balanced. And the thing that we're going to have to educate our fans on is what could look like somebody trying to run the score up, but that won't be the case. But we're going to need those point differentials. If you're up by 4 late in the fourth quarter, it doesn't mean take a knee. You might have to score some more points because you're going to need them later on for the tiebreaker system. So I think it's going to be that close and that tight in the competition within the region.
Well, Coach, you mentioned West Forsyth. Just some stats that I was looking at. They only averaged 230 yards a game on offense last year. They had 21 turnovers. What is it that, that's the team you're looking at. What is it that you think is going to be the difference in them jumping from a 4-6 record to being the front runner?
Well, I think the thing that they have is something that everybody always wants, and that's linemen. Linemen that are difference makers, and they have those guys. Turnovers, if they don't have those turnovers, they're probably a 2 seed or a 3 seed. That's how close the region was. There were tiebreaker systems that had to determine seeding last year for that region. So I just feel like they got the right pieces coming back.
Well, Coach, what do you feel some of the challenges might be for your program stepping up to 7A?
I think the biggest thing is where you have to be consistent week in and week out because everybody's good. If you're playing Georgia 7A football, you're good. And some people will say, well, that team went 2-8. Yeah, they might have gone 2-8, but they're playing 7A football in Georgia. The 8 teams that beat them are good. So everybody's good. There's no question about that. I think one of the challenges that we have is outside of Lambert and North Forsyth, we don't know these teams. Our kids haven't grown up playing against these teams. Our kids haven't seen them in the past couple of years, even in our non-region schedule. So we've got a bunch of unfamiliar teams. I'll bet you that half our team couldn't tell you the mascot of Chattahoochee High School right now. So those are the challenges, just getting familiar with new people. I think it's going to be the biggest challenge for us.
I'm here.
Okay. I didn't know if you had a
No, I
follow
was
up.
throwing it to you.
Oh Lord, have mercy.
I thought
Wow.
you'd be
Wow.
prepared, Jeff.
I was. Hey, we did it so perfect last time. It's hard to, you know. Uh, Coach, you mentioned about the excitement. We all were just talking about, some of the new rivalries that you're going to have in 7A. What I kind of like is we have a local team now that's going to be playing at the largest classification, which lends an opportunity for this area to maybe get some more recognition than perhaps we haven't gotten up here. And does that put any extra pressure on y'all to not just compete but be successful?
Well, I think we're Gainesville, so the pressure's there to begin with. So, and I think that the pressure of maybe the motivation really is to show that we belong, and I believe that we do, and I think it's our team believes that we belong. We've got a bunch of guys that have been starting for us. 10, 12 guys have been starting for us for 2 years now, going into their third year, and they're seasoned and they're ready to go. They're ready to prove themselves. And so I think it's a good time to make a jump based on the roster that we have, and our guys are ready to go prove themselves. And so they're excited for it. We're all excited for it, and we're determined to show 7A football that Gainesville does belong.
Well, Coach, we're in this COVID-19 shutdown, and it's canceled. Spring practice, so you're losing 2 weeks there in a scrimmage, but thankfully that scrimmage will be pushed into August, so you guys will get to see that scrimmage or play that scrimmage. What does the summer look like right now for you guys? If you can kind of predict it, we can't predict what's going to happen with the COVID-19 virus, but for you guys, is it just business as usual? You're planning the same as you would if it was just a regular time of the year?
No, I don't think so. It definitely changes things. All the things that we would have installed in spring practice, we'll now be installing them in the summer, which means that that we got less reps at them. We got to get in shape. I trust that my guys are getting in shape, but we all know that it's different when you got a coach there with you and pushing you and motivating you. The level of commitment that it takes to get in shape. So, we got to get in shape, and then we got to install in the summer what we would have installed in the spring. So, what we look like week one might be, 60% of our defense and 60% of our offense, and so it's just probably going to take a little bit more time than usual to get to where we need to be as far as full installations are concerned. But again, we got that veteran football team, so we hopefully should be able to install pretty quickly.
Okay.
You just mentioned veteran, but it just occurred to me that perhaps something we should have followed up with early. We talked about Gianni and Yusuf and Said and some of the other guys. Who are some newcomers that fans can look for this year that you think can put a mark a little bit for the coming future of 3 years?
I think that is the running back position for us with Naeem Cheeks. He started as strong safety for us last year and really played well. I got some limited time playing running back as well, but in the limited amount of time that he did get, he averaged 7 yards a carry. He's got the potential to be really explosive. A lot of wiggle. Going to look a lot different than what our running backs looked like last year, in the sense that he's like a water bug. He's going to be hard to tackle, but he's also got some power too. So very different running style than what we saw last year. But that guy's got a chance to really wow the fans that show up at City
Well, Coach, what are you doing these days? I mean, how are you staying busy? Are you bored? I mean, what are you doing?
I'm staying pretty busy. We've developed a pretty extensive Google Classroom format for our players, and so we talked about the installs just a minute ago. I'm actually installing the offense a play a day. I'm videoing myself a play a day, and our team is watching that at home, and So we're trying not to get too far behind on the install deal. So we're doing that, and our defensive staff is doing the same thing. And so we're staying pretty busy. With this being spring break, we kind of backed off on that a little bit just to give everybody a little bit of time away because we needed a break, as crazy as that sounds, because that new normal of online classes and working out on your own was a little stressful for everybody as well. So believe it or not, we actually needed the break. But spring break wise, man, I'm doing a lot of yard work. I'm camping in the backyard with my kids. I promised them I'd take them camping, so I popped the camper up in the backyard, and just trying to make the most of it.
So let me get this straight: you're installing plays on a Google Classroom.
Yes, sir.
We're gonna have to mic you up. We're gonna do mic'd up with Coach Webb and doing this Google Classroom.
Hey, look.
I wonder what Bear Bryant would think about that.
Adapt or die, man. Adapt or die.
Well, Coach, we thank you for taking time out of your day twice today to talk to us. We do appreciate it.
Yeah, man, no problem. Anything for you guys. Y'all do a great job.
Coach, take care and enjoy your camping trip, even though it's in the backyard.
All right, thanks.
All right.
That's right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
He told us he had already done a lot of research in the region. Again, you could hear the optimism I think that he has for the upcoming season, and it's good to know that that they're trying to keep busy but focused. It's very uncertain as to what we're going to have moving forward, whether even we're going to have a season. I mean, knock on wood, let's hope so. But you hear like guys like Ali already taking on some high quality leadership aspects, which you have to have on every team. You're going to be successful. So that was good to see.
Well, and we were talking about something interesting.
That's kind of
to North. That's interesting.
0-6, and they've had some close games. I probably, if I look back at North Forsyth, they probably don't own anybody quite like that. I mean, not in football. So that looks like, to me, that's probably going to be the game that I think Gainesville's going to be looking at. They want to get off the schneid on that, and figure if you can beat or compete with North Forsyth, you have a chance not just to make the playoffs, but perhaps even make a run at a region title. But all time, Bo, actually Gainesville has pretty good success against this entire region. They're 6-2 all time against Forsyth Central, 1-1 against Lambert. Both of those games in the last 2 years. As we just mentioned, 0-6 against North Forsyth, 2-2 against South, 3-1 against West. Never played Denmark because Denmark's only a couple years old. So, I think that when you look at those numbers and the tradition that Gainesville football has, and they're a team on the rise. I think we would have talked about Gainesville no matter what classification and what region they were in, even if they had stayed in their old 8-6A where you had DeQuil and you had Lanier, and maybe even Buford coming in. I think Gainesville still would have been a player in that region. I think they're a player in this region, and I think this is I think we have some great football to look forward to out of Region 6-7A.
Well, we're all looking forward to football season because, hey, that's all we have to look forward to right now, unless.
I would look forward to tiddlywinks at this point, but I'm gonna be greedy and say I'm ready for some football.
A little interesting tidbit of information, which now we're talking about all time, is that Gainesville played in the same region with North Forsyth, South Forsyth, back in, what was that, 2000? No, 94.
And,
way back.
Yeah, well,
way back. It was
they were. I think when South,
yeah.
I think when South first opened up, I think that they were in that region for a few years, and then everybody kind of scattered. But yeah, they were in that region. I know West Forsyth was in that region when they first opened, maybe 10 or 12 years ago. Something like that, because I remember going and covering some wrestling tournaments and some basketball games over there. So, there's some brief history with a lot of these schools, but now I'm kind of like Heath. I think this is just great for football in Hall County in Northeast Georgia, that we have a team in the highest classification that I think can compete. It's going to be a huge challenge. But then again, I think it's also going to give some exposure to some of the kids in this area that may not get it playing in the highest classification.
Well, it will be interesting to see what happens when they finally get to tee it off, hopefully in late August. Well, Jeff, this part of our series, we started with 7A, 6A. We'll go on down to Class 6A. That one's going to be interesting. We'll talk about that one on our next show.
That's going to be 8-6A, which has Buford and Abersham Central. But, man, you got Decula, you got Lanier, Shiloh, Central Gwinnett.
Can you say rival alert?
Oh, red alert, red alert. Oh, man, that Lanier, Decula, Buford triangle on a Friday night is going to be, it's going to be great. It's going
to be great to see that, how that unfolds. We'll talk about that one on our next show here of our 2020 Region Rundown. Jeff's on Twitter at HeartJJ22. I'm at the Bo Wilson. You can check us out on Twitter at WDUN Sports. We're on all the socials. Just keyword search on Instagram and Facebook, AccessWDUN Sports. For Jeff, I'm Bo. Enjoy the rest of your week, everyone.